Worship, church, congregation, fellowship, community is where we begin to make real in the world what is real in our inner lives, what is real in our connection with whatever is ultimate, most important, most true for us. Be that the character of the divine, universe, or humanity that we hang our hope on, that which fuels our work, that helps us see the world that can be and that is becoming. Now, part of how we make this real is through symbols, making real and physical that which is of spirit, heart, soul, and mind. I've got peace. I've got joy, love, tears, strength. Symbols that help us bring that which is in our mind, our heart, our spirit, real and physical. When the non-physical world of value, belief, emotion, faith can be hard to remember or hold onto, symbols help us bring them into our world. The rain can help us remember our sorrow. The ocean help us remember the vastness of our love and the love that holds us. And I wonder today, as we talk about water and the many forms it takes, what does water remind you of about being human or divine, about being a part of this universe? I'll take just a couple of answers. So if you have a really strong connection to water, now's your time.
I was born in the Middle East, and water in the desert is gold.
Born in the Middle East, and water in the desert is gold, because water is the source of life. Yes.
We are 2/3 water.
We are 2/3 water.
In West Africa, I got rescued from a maelstrom of water that was slowly taking us under.
Oh my goodness. In West Africa, you were rescued from a mouth of water that was slow. Maelstrom, thank you, of water. Maelstrom, undertow of water that was slowly taking us under. Right, water can be powerful and destructive as well. One more.
For all our animals, water is necessity.
For all our animals, and indeed for all life, right? Water is necessity. I learned from our 9 a.m. folks that this amount of saline that we are, the water in our blood, is the same as that of the ocean. Our connection with water and with this element is very deep. And one other truth about water that it reminds many of us is that water is always changing, ebbing and flowing and changing its natural surroundings too. Winding through rocks, making new streams and brooks with all it interacts with. Now, our other element today is, of course, the balance of water, fire. So now, if fire is really your thing, now's your moment. What are a couple of things about life, about being human, that fire teaches us? Provides heat. Fire was one of our first discoveries.
We are actually burning beside of a 70-watt burn.
We're burning, okay, this is from a doctor amongst us. We are burning 70 watts of energy in us. Learn something new every day. Okay, one more. Wisdom about fire. It gives us cooked food. Yes. Fire is also often held up as an element that helps this cycle of life, right? We heard about the destruction of a forest fire that then, when done without taking over, right, is creating new life, new potential because of its destruction. We are able to have newness and, in fact, a more fertile soil sometimes. Now, in our story today, fire and water were presented as balancing forces. And though they were cut out of the story a bit early, thanks to our friend Falsehood here, it's important to note that these elements were abiding together and in the very same place as truth and falsehood. All essential, basic, elemental forces of life. All this month, this Sunday being the last of the month, we have been returning to these basic elemental forces of life and what they remind us of our own essential nature of spirit, values, of humanity, and divinity. And at the core of many of these is, of course, wind, breath, and spirit. She was the ultimate arbiter in our story today, spirit, source, and breath. And you all talked more about breath, spirit, wind a couple of weeks ago with our Buddhist friend, John Kernodle. But she was the sustainer and building block of our very beginning, of our very being, and the one that truth and falsehood went to their final answer. Sometimes there are disputes within this community as well. Those of us who are older, we might not hear them, but those of us who are younger, we hear them being played out in real life sometimes, right? So we open to these as well. And we turn to the wind who gave the final answer which they found by listening all over the land, by taking the time to hear. And in these answers, wind found that falsehood is very powerful, but it can only rule where truth has stopped struggling to be heard. And so, we take the time each week here in worship and each day in our own practices to make time for truth. Not just the truth that is not false news, but the deeper truths of our values, our spirits, and ourselves, not just as individuals, but as a whole community. The values and truths that we hold, the hope that we hang our hats on for our world and for our wider community. We hold that love is as wide and as deep and as ancient as the ocean, and that we too are mostly made of water and of love when we remember and can return to this truth. We know that fire can burn when fuel is sustained and refilled, and so too can our passion for the light of truth and the warmth and power of connection and solidarity. Now, one of our main worship sources this year has been a book called A House for Hope, The Promise for Progressive Religion in the 21st Century. It's by Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker and Reverend John Burens, and they are two Unitarian Universalist ministers and leaders in our faith. In their chapter on spirit, what our month of April has been focused on, they retell a story of a man who we'll call David. David was an adult who traveled back to a place he'd once lived as a child. The place was a small village in France called Les Chambons. And during World War II, this small village became home, refuge, sanctuary to hundreds of Jewish children. David was one of these children. He traveled back because he wanted to understand why this small village had taken in so many children during this time when most did nothing. He discovered that the answer was in their worship services. The village was a Huguenot Protestant village that gathered regularly together for worship. They gathered and sang hymns and recalled the faith of their ancestors who, I quote, held fast to the spirit of love even in times of trial. They shared gratitude with and they prayed for one another regularly. And when David asked the people to share why they responded in this way during the war, they said they could not imagine responding in any other way. It was simply the shape of their souls. Their ways of worship forming them for courage and resistance. The shape of their souls shaped by their worship. The shape of their souls enabling them to respond with love, bravely, and with sacrifice, and in a deep solidarity. My prayer is that our worship here together each week, and that our worship here alone but together each day, might shape our souls too into oceans of love and fires of commitment. May our worship help us to remember love and connection and justice, especially in times of difficulty and oppression. And may they always, always remind us to what it is to rejoice together and to celebrate together, so that we might sing and dance even in the rain. For that joy will be the fuel of the flame of our faith. May our worship shape our souls for love, for bravery, and for joy. Amen. May it be so, and may we make it so.